Tonight on the Black Channel. If you can't get people to stop talking about the past, just tell them it never happened. The Black Channel is live. Unapologetic, unadulterated, and absolutely uncompromising. Greetings, brothers and sisters from around the world, and welcome back to the home, the haven, the stronghold, and the everlasting superfortress of intelligent black thought. We are the Black Media, and this is the Black Channel, and I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the voice of Black America, the Black Authority, broadcasting to you live from the only historically black college and university of higher education and learning in the cosmos. You are, of course, welcome to join us. And join us you shall, because on tonight's program here, you know, folks, as the drum beats of reparations thump even larger and harder, you are starting to see that we are embroiled in a world war, in the words of our immortal ancestor, Dr. John Henry Clark, to erase black people from history. And it is being promoted under the guise or under the rationale that we need to protect white people from something. Everybody loves history until we start talking about it. And case in point, I could show you so many examples, and this dovetails with so much of what's happening right now. I could show you so many examples, but I really just want to distill it down to just one in particular here that has happened recently. This shows you the villainous extent to which these folks are going now. They are dropping all the pretenses. This is about saying that white supremacy in America never did happen, and thus inversely to say that it isn't happening now. So what you'll end up doing here is you'll have a bunch of black children who are raised completely divorced from the environment that they're in. That they will be experiencing white supremacy on a daily basis, but the schools will now indoctrinate them to tell them it's something else. It isn't that. You just aren't trying hard enough. That racism and white supremacy is just something you should expect. Injustice is something you should expect, but it's not injustice, it's just you're too sensitive to it. That white supremacy isn't something that you should stop and fight. White supremacy is something you should just ignore. Case in point now, there is an article that I posted here from CNN, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a few days because it dovetails off of so much how the past and the present shape the future. What they were talking about here is Ruby Bridges' movie under review by Florida School District after parent complaint. Now, when black folk are upset about something, you got to have all of us take to the streets en masse. With white folk, all it takes is one white person to make a phone call, and then next thing you know, the bookshelves are cleared. The article says that a film about a black first grader who integrated an all-white elementary school in the South is under review in the Florida School District after a parent objected to the movie's use of slurs and argued it could teach students that, quote, white people hate black people, according to school officials and documents obtained by CNN. You'll all remember that I taught you here well over a decade ago. I taught you from the very beginning. I taught you that white supremacy believes in attacking children. White supremacy's primary method of doing things is to attack children. White supremacy does not hold children sacred, except when it's convenient to it. But white supremacy believes one of its core principles is to attack black children. They target black children. They don't have any reservations. They don't have any scruples. They don't have any morals. They don't have any principles. White supremacy considers it to be a mark of masculinity or femininity to attack little kids. Asymmetrical warfare. The adults are too big and tough for you. Go after some children and some grannies. The warrior class is putting it on your ass. Even if the grown black females are giving you too much trouble, go after the babies and the elderly. That's what you need to do then. Go after the babies and the elderly. Go after them. I've taught you this for the longest time because I want you to understand the mind of the enemy that you're dealing with so that you see how they deal with things. They see children, you see children, they see a target. You see children, they see a target. That's the point I want you to take from this. You think you see black children, white supremacy sees an easy target. It goes on to say here that a parent of a second grade student at North Shore Elementary in St. Petersburg filed a formal complaint March 6 requesting the removal of the 1998 movie Ruby Bridges from the school's list of approved films. This came after the movie was shown to about 60 second graders on March 2nd as part of a Black History Month lesson. Isabel Mascareñas, a spokesperson for Pinellas County Schools, told CNN. A parent whose name is redacted in the copy of the complaint shared with CNN wrote that the movie is not appropriate for second graders and would be better suited for an 8th grade American history class. The parent objected in part to racial slurs used in the film, depictions of a child placing a noose around a doll's neck, and characters threatening a hanging. The parent wrote that the film could teach students racial slurs, quote, how they are different, and that, quote, white people hate black people. So in other words, she objects to the teaching of American history. Understand something, we ain't talking about slavery. We are not talking about slavery anymore. We are talking about the continued experience of the descendants of American slaves. The immigrants were not a factor at this point. The immigrants were not experiencing this at this point. You're talking about the descendants of the American slaves, and they are now trying to tell you that when the Emancipation Proclamation in 13, 14, 15 minutes passed, slavery was dead and gone, and we will now teach the children that these things simply did not occur, that you're going to wait until they get in the 8th grade, and even then, you're gambling that it will ever be taught to them. They're not upset that lies are being told. Notice what she's saying. She isn't upset because there's a lie. It's not like you're teaching that girls are boys or boys are girls. She's angry that history is being taught. She's angry that their history is being taught. If you'll all remember in my historic broadcast that YouTube keeps trying to ban every time I put it up, the 5 steps to Nazi Germany. First, they will speak against you in their homes. Next, they will murmur and speak against you in the streets. Next, they will speak against you in their mass media. Next, you will have politicians passing all these laws specifically targeting you and your group. And then finally, they will take to the streets in wholesale indiscriminate murder. Because that's what all of this is leading up to. So they're teaching you that they want to tell your children that these things didn't happen. But meanwhile, they're at home teaching their children how to practice white supremacy. You see, Erasing white supremacy is teaching white supremacy. Do you understand that? White supremacy depends on being invisible. White supremacy is taught in every white home in America in varying degrees. So you see, white supremacy only gets defeated when you put a spotlight on it. White supremacy is absolutely terrified of daylight. White supremacy needs the shadows. White supremacy doesn't even like shadows. It likes to be totally invisible. So it's always there, but it's not visible. So white supremacy depends. Hey, you got to stop talking about that. We can't operate and move the way we need to move if you keep saying that we exist. We can't operate the way we need to operate if you keep showing movies, films, books that put white supremacy in its proper context. So she is upset that they're teaching history when it comes to black people. Now think about this, you all. When it comes to black people, they want to erase the slave trade. They want to erase Jim Crow and lynching. Now they want to erase segregation. No, they want to erase black history. Our history on this continent, they want to erase it. They already don't tell you about the black folk who've done positive things. They only want to teach you about slavery and segregation and Jim Crow. Now they're saying, yeah, let's remove that too, because you niggas keep investigating it too much. They don't want you even doing that because you keep investigating too much. It'd be different if they could just mention it and then move along, but they're mentioning it and then you're sitting up here saying, well, let me see how this connects to my life. Hey, stop teaching that. Just cut out the books altogether. Get that film off the shelf. Don't mention those. This is ethnic cleansing American style. It goes on to say here, after receiving the complaint, quote, the school will now engage in the formal objection process to review the challenged materials, Mascareñas said, citing the district's policies on contested instructional materials. The movie has not been removed from all school districts and still remains in the district's movie library, she said. Teaching materials in Florida schools are becoming increasingly contentious as Republican state lawmakers have pushed for restrictions of lessons and instructional tools involving race, white supremacy, illegitimate, sexuality and gender, totally legitimate. Among the resulting legislation is a bill Governor Ron DeSantis signed last year that requires books in classroom libraries be pre-approved materials or vetted by a special media specialist trained by Florida's Department of Education. Trained or specially chosen and hired by the Department of Education. Remember last week when I was talking about in Texas? Yeah, Houston, we're going to get rid of the school board. We'll install some folks chosen by us who will not do troublesome things like teach history. They won't do troublesome things like that. I want to show you a picture from the article, and this picture says so much. You see, this is why they don't want us making our own films. They don't want us making our own films. They don't want us putting together our own stuff here. I'm not saying this film was made by black people. What I'm saying here is that when you put together a film, you can control imagery. You can show these things as it happened or as it affected you. Think about this little girl here. This puts it in its proper context. This is a little tiny child surrounded by a bunch of white men in a place where grown white folk are sitting up here yelling racial slurs and racial threats at a child. This little baby has got grown folk out there terrorizing her simply for existing. And they don't want you to teach that this is America. This is America's history. So when you start seeing parallels between that and today, then you start understanding what you're dealing with when you see the Ron DeSantis's show themselves. Because at this time, they were still lynching black folk, burning black homes, killing black civil rights leaders, killing black civil rights workers, killing random black folk. That's what they do. That image right there is very powerful for you to see, because that puts it in its proper context so that you can see it in full color. Now it puts it in its proper context. That affects you. To actually see what it is, that affects people. And I'm not just talking about white society. I'm talking about black society. When you see your little black babies being treated like this, that affects you. That affects you. This is the whole reason they don't want you to talk about this. The article goes on to say here, 2 weeks before the movie was shown to second graders at North Shore Elementary, permission forms were sent to the students' parents, along with a link to the Ruby Ridges trailer, Mascareñas said. Oh, well, that puts it in its proper context, doesn't it? So in other words, the school board is by default. They were basically telling the parents, now, if one of you would like to make an objection, now that we have a new law in place, we would like to offer some of you to make an objection. Well, before we show this, is there anybody out there? We need our hands to be clean. So you see, we need to know if somebody would like to make an objection. We'd like to know if someone would like to object to that. So we're sending this home with a bunch of permission forms. We want the parents to give us permission. Can we find a parent who will object somewhere, so that we have plausible deniability and excuse to go ahead and say, oh, well, we can't show this. There were parents who objected to it. This is what they're up against now. They go on to say that the parent who filed the objection was among the two families that opted to not have their students watch the movie, she said. So in other words, two parents, and only one made a complaint. There were two parents, but the other one didn't make a complaint. So you see, they basically carpet bombed to see, can we get somebody to object to this so we can have an excuse not to show it. Quote, it was communicated with the parent that the school would not have any future showings during this school year, as the movie had already been shown, Mascareñas said. So they're saying it was communicated with the parent that they wouldn't even be showing this movie anymore because for this school year, because it's already been shown. That didn't stop anything now, did it? So what does that tell you this is really about? The film's namesake, Ruby Bridges, was 6 when she became the first black student to attend William Frantz Elementary School in New Orleans on November 14th, 1960. Flanked by 4 federal marshals, Bridges passed through an angry crowd of white people, hurling slurs and protesting her presence after the desegregation of New Orleans schools was ordered by a federal judge. 6 years after the Supreme Court made racial segregation in public schools illegal with Brown versus Board of Education, the film is a dramatized retelling of her story. Tori Ann Johnson, the film's screenwriter, told CNN she believes second graders are not too young to watch the movie if their teacher can provide historical context and answer their questions. Teachers across the country have told her the movie is a valuable teaching tool, she said. Quote, The reason I think the second grade is not too young is that by that age, children are recognizing racial differences. Ruby was 6 years old when she desegregated William France, Johnson said. If children are old enough to be called the N-word and learn what it means, then it's my opinion that second graders who are 7 and 8 years of age can and should begin to learn about the history of racism in this country, Johnson said. Quote, parents who don't want their children to learn this story in public schools should have the right to opt out, she said, but they should not have the right to prevent teachers from teaching the Ruby Bridges story to other children receiving a public school education. Don't you all understand that the folks who most go around talking about we're all the same, those are the people who most practice white supremacy? Tucker Carlson and Fox News love to go around saying we shouldn't discuss our racial differences. Then they turn right around and defend white supremacy at every turn. Now, when it comes to promoting whiteness and white supremacy, 2 thumbs up. From the very same people who tell you that race shouldn't matter. But what that does is it connects to what Dr. Claude Anderson has always taught us. This isn't about race not mattering. What they're trying to say is that we want to freeze the world in place. We want to maintain the status quo. White people used racism and white supremacy to get where they are. Now that they are where they are, they want everyone else to say in unison, ain't no white supremacy. Leave everything the way it is. Let's be very clear. These are not laws meant to spare people's feelings. By the way, these are from the same folk who tell you that political correctness is wrong and that you shouldn't be so sensitive. Then they turn right around and tell you, oh, we don't want to teach about white supremacy, American white supremacy in schools because, well, there are some parents who say it's sensitive. In other words, they want the right and the ability to teach and practice white supremacy, but they want your children to be completely ignorant to it. Then they get to turn around and tell you, well, there's no real racism, and if you do encounter it, well, those people are just ignorant. Those people are just ignorant. I mean, no, they're not necessarily racist. They're just ignorant, you know. As if ignorance is a shield of racism, by the way. As if racism and ignorance do not coexist. We are up against a world war to erase our experience from the world, because if you can erase white supremacy, then you've already erased reparations. You've already erased it. It's already gone. If you can erase white supremacy, if you can get black folk to sit up here and just ignore it, overlook it, dismiss it, explain it away, then there's no need to fight reparations, because the folk that you're up against are going to say everything's fine, everything's great, maintain the status quo. White supremacy now is about the big lie. White supremacy now is about promoting the big lie. And the big lie today is ain't no racism, ain't no white supremacy. That was a long time ago, 3 or 4 decades ago. And we don't have to worry about that anymore. That even though we didn't do anything to fix it, your children literally had to be escorted to school by federal marshals. We did absolutely nothing at all to address these systemic inequities and discriminations. Nothing was done, and you should just go ahead and limp along. Now that we've gathered up all the wealth and we control it and we've hoarded it over here, you all just go ahead and limp along. And if your children start to realize that something's wrong, you see, y'all got to understand, most parents are not historical scholars. That's just the bottom line and the truth of it. Most parents are not historical scholars. So they rely on other people to put these things together. Look, everybody doesn't have the same level of cognitive ability to be able to recite and recall the facts and figures and the names and the dates and put them in their proper context. There are a bunch of you who may think that I'm a pretty smart guy, but even I don't consider myself to be on the level of a Dr. John Henry Clark or a Chancellor Williams or a Joseph Ben-Yochanan. I don't consider myself to be on that level, which is why I had to learn from them. So you see, if you can silence the teachers, then what you have are these great big huge gaps in your learning and these great big huge gaps in your understanding. So you might start in one place and then you break off into babble later. You might start good in one area, but then you're going to break off into babbling somewhere else. So this is why it is so important for them to just annihilate this and remove this. You see, this is why Nate, and the other thing is, books today, don't y'all realize the school system went on a campaign to get rid of the books? There's a bunch of school districts around America now don't even have physical books anymore. Do you all understand that? They're giving the kids laptops or tablets, digital tablets. There's a bunch of them that don't even have physical books anymore. During the pandemic, there's a bunch of schools got rid of the physical books. They're like, okay, this will make it a whole lot easier. So y'all are sitting up here talking about read the books, and the kids are like, book? What is that? What do you mean? I got my tablet here. I got my laptop. Guy right here. So you see, if you don't know about the destruction of black civilization, if you don't know about the ISIS papers, if you don't know about the miseducation of the Negro, if you don't know about those things, then you can't go there. And let's just be honest, even the HBCUs don't properly teach our elder scholars. The HBCUs don't properly teach them. So the truth of the matter is, y'all can like it or not, but the truth of the matter is that the majority of your kids, they get introduced to these concepts through mass media, and that includes the internet. So you see, when I was a child, we had heard about the spook who sat by the door, but we couldn't really get our hands on it till the internet came about. But we still had books and people who were still connected to the civil rights movement. So we learned a lot more then. These kids today, they don't have anybody connected to the civil rights movement in their family anymore. They don't have it anymore. Spike Lee already did the Malcolm X film back in the 90s. He already did the Malcolm X film. Somebody tell me where the next one's coming from. You see, when you turn your TV today, you're seeing black gangsters, but there's no historical context being put to it. I would suggest to you that you would learn a hell of a whole lot more from watching something like Boardwalk Empire or Peaky Blinders. Those television series at least have historical context that at least touch on the real world, even if they are heavily fictionalized or dramatized. With black folk, you got a series that mentions Bumpy Johnson, but does it truly put Bumpy in his proper historical context? And you might mention Malcolm X, but does it really put Malcolm in his proper historical context? That's my point. So your children are being introduced to these things, and they might touch them or blush them in passing, but that's all. So you see, when you start sanitizing this, that's a problem. When I was in high school, when I took Spanish in high school, basically it's standard across the board. The Spanish in high schools, they make you watch Stand and Deliver. They either make you watch Stand and Deliver or American Me. Edward James Olmos. American Me, I couldn't make it through the whole film, but Stand and Deliver wasn't bad. The story of Jaime Escalante. Cool story, great, wonderful, well directed, well acted, whole 9 yards. Fantastic. That's their experience. You should be aware of that if you're a black person, specifically you in California, you should certainly be aware of that. That's great. But you see, when it comes to us, all of a sudden, we got to remove everything. We got to get rid of that and scrub everything. Well, this is the history hasn't happened. Well, political correctness is wrong, but I'm offended by this movie. Well, the movie lying? No, but it'll make the kids think bad things about white folk. No, it will make them think bad things about white supremacy. Let's be very clear, folks. These people, this so-called parent, they're not worried about children having a bad opinion of white people. They're worried that your children are gonna have a bad opinion of white supremacy. After all, it's white men who are escorting this little girl into the building. So any child can naturally see that everyone here isn't practicing racism against them. What it will do is make sure that they can actually start telling a distinction. But if you teach them that there are no white supremacists, then your children trot through life treating everybody like they're okay. And when they get mistreated, then they start rationalizing themselves why it happened. Then they start talking like Candace Owens, who we all know is a fraud and a fake. She's damn aware of what white supremacy is. She's just like, look, can I get the bag by betraying the rest of these people? Cool. If you all agree with what you're hearing here tonight, I want you to give me this stack of books emoji in the chat room. If you agree with what you're hearing here tonight, give me the stack of books emoji in the chat room and hit the likes button for me. It's over 4,000 people watching this live. Maybe I got some members of the Florida Department of Education in here and they don't like tonight's program. Maybe I got some of you up in here tonight. But for the rest of you here, hit that likes button for me. I'm trying to teach something so that you understand we are in the middle of a world war. They are targeting your babies. They're targeting your children. They are targeting them to mentally kill them. They are looking to mentally destroy and assassinate and murder your children in the most devious, diabolical manner possible to tell your children ain't no white supremacy, that these incidents didn't occur. So you see, if your children, because remember, we have an expansive history. Let me explain to you all why this is important here. Let me explain to you why it's important. And I want you to let this sink in for a minute. For those of you who are younger, I'm almost 50 years old now, but for those of us who in the 90s after the LA riots following the beating of Rodney King, not Dr. King, Rodney King, but after the beating of Rodney King, understand something. That wasn't something confined to Los Angeles. Let's not sit up here and be deceived. Everywhere around America, black folk were on board with that. Around America, that wasn't just something in California. They had support around the country before the internet was a thing. The uprising in Los Angeles after the acquittal of the cops who beat Rodney King, they had support around the country. Black folks stood up around the country, around the nation. Even the news media couldn't sit up here and propagandize it the way they wanted to, because everywhere they went, the old civil rights generation didn't have sway anymore. My generation was coming up, and my generation was saying no justice, no peace. These were young black people in Louisiana, in Texas, in Georgia, in Chicago, young black people. What happened in one place resonated in others from our common shared experiences. So everywhere was Los Angeles. It was after this event that Spike Lee, when we talk about the movie Malcolm X, this resurgence of things, rap music actually being a force of revolution. Now the force of drug addiction, now that the white corporations have taken over. So you see, we started investigating our history and learning about our history, learning about where we came from. And that was when we started learning about the atrocities committed against us. And then that's about the time that you start hearing the resurgence of three words: Greenwood, Archer, and Pine. That's when you start hearing about Tulsa. That's when that took off, and we've never really had a proper film done about Tulsa. But that's about the time you start hearing the resurgence of Tulsa, and it starts being mentioned. The Tom Joyner Morning Show, I'll give credit where credit is due, during Black History Month. But your local radio stations, they started talking about, you want to talk about race riots, we want to talk about what they did to us in Tulsa. Next thing you know, you start hearing about something called the Black Wall Street. As kids, it's like, wait a minute, we had a Wall Street? We had a Wall Street? Yeah, and it wasn't in New York City either. It was in Oklahoma. It was in New York City. It wasn't in New York City. So all of a sudden you start hearing this concept of a Black Wall Street. And then you hear what happened to it. But then for those of us who continued our education, we started saying, by the way, you do know that that nomenclature, that nickname, Black Wall Street, that was just one assigned to many different places across this country. Wilmington, Rosewood, this was many places that had thriving Black communities, which were built on thriving Black economies. In Florida, you talk about Rosewood. How many of y'all want to talk about Eatonville? Hope I got that correctly. They have an arch there. Oldest Black municipality. Still there today. You go through the damn thing, and I think there's like a Family Dollar or something. But if we don't sit here and teach you about this now, then you don't realize it. Yeah, if you haven't been to, you go to Orlando, y'all going to Disney World, y'all better go start to look up these places. When I go to a city and I see a bunch of damn freeways through a place, you better recognize if there's a bunch of damn freeways, that's where your Black neighborhoods used to be. But yeah, next time you want to go to Disney World, go check out Eatonville. You've had thriving Black communities forever. The whole time. The whole time you've had that, but they don't teach you that. So when industrialization came and basically blighted these areas, they're hoping that nobody ever remembers. They're hoping no one ever remembers. So you hear about a Lake Lanier, but only if we in the modern day remind you, because the schools damn sure ain't gonna tell you. The schools aren't gonna tell you. My hometown is Shreveport, Louisiana, a large Black former slave enclave. They called it Moortown. Then they dropped a damn airport on it. Yeah, how we gonna deal with Moortown? Oh, that's easy. We're building the Shreveport Regional Airport right where you are. So glad y'all got this here. We're gonna build the Shreveport Regional Airport right here. Right here. There you go. Well, you know there's plenty of land down there on the white folks side of town. Yeah, but there's plenty of niggas over here. So let's get them cement trucks coming. So you see, that doesn't get taught in the history books. They tell you that you're poor and they'll gloss over the Homestead Act. Let me tell you about how demonic history is taught in this country. You all only understand the context and the significance of the Homestead Act because of the new Black media. But do you know who you didn't get it from? You didn't get it from your school books. Even if your school books taught you about the Homestead Act, they only mention the Homestead Act as being something that assisted white people. They say immigrants, but they don't say white immigrants because those are the only people who could get assistance through the Homestead Act. But if they teach you about the Homestead Act, they don't put it in its historical context. You've been to school, you've had school books, Rand McNally and McGraw-Hill and Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. Yeah, but you notice when they teach about the Homestead Act in those books, they don't teach you how the Homestead Act affected you today. They just tell you it was something that the government made to expand the country and to encourage people to settle. But they don't put it in its historical context so that you understand, by the way, them white kids sitting next to you in class, they are the recipients and beneficiaries of the Homestead Act. Their ancestors were given hundreds of acres of free land and money and supplies to get themselves started on a good foot when they got here. Your people were blocked at the front door and never got this. And even if you go through World War I and World War II, the GI Bill did not a damn thing for black soldiers. Because the GI Bill, we're giving you a GI Bill to go buy a house. Yeah, but the problem is they were going back to segregated communities. So they have a GI Bill that they can't use because they can't buy a house with it. Because the issue was not that you didn't have the money. The issue is that you live in a system of white supremacy. And if that's not put in its proper context, then your children will read the words Homestead Act without understanding. I'll be damned. This is why the white side of town is quote unquote the good side of town. Because they're drawing upon centuries of wealth. Centuries. So even in the history books that you all have read, it wasn't until the new black media came along that they put these things in its proper context. When Dr. Claude Anderson came along and put those things in its proper context. When Jason Black comes along and talks about the GI Bill and puts it in its proper context. You see GI Bill and you only know what it is today and can't figure out why black folk are still behind when you have the GI Bill since World War II. No, we haven't had use of the GI Bill until the 70s. Everybody else had a 30, 40 year head start. And truth be told, we still don't have proper use of it now because they usually go smuggle you off in some military town. So when we talk about history, it's been up to the new black media to educate folk because even for those of you who read it in the books, without the proper context, you're just as ignorant as you were before you picked up that book. So when you talk about the Black Wall Streets and then we talk about those things, you notice your book in Florida isn't gonna teach you about Rosewood nor Eatonville. Do you understand that? Your history books in Florida will not teach you about either Rosewood nor Eatonville, much less Wilmington, much less Tulsa, much less Seneca Village. We can sit here naming names all night, but time is at a premium, so I won't do that. But you all know we can keep going. Philadelphia, Chicago, and other places. We can keep going for a while. We're not going to do it. Not tonight. Maybe some other time. Maybe some other time. But I want you to understand what you're looking at there. I want you to understand what you're looking at there. So when you hear about these places around the country, even if you've seen the history, if it's not given to you in its proper context, you'll hear a word and never be able to make that connection. You'll hear a word and never be able to make that connection because it wasn't taught to you properly. This is why it is essential for you to have the history taught to you and to know it. And the schools are backed out of it. So for those of us who have taken up the task of putting it into popular media and putting it into a form that's convenient for you to digest, putting it in a form that's convenient for you to digest. So we've made documentary films. We've gotten together scholars. We've taken money and time out of from ourselves, from our families, from our duties, because wasn't nobody else doing it. Because they're erasing these things from your schools. Your children are coming home and you're just assuming that they're reading the same books you are. And meanwhile, they've whitewashed it and erased it. Now they're just trying to outlaw it altogether. So you know about Tulsa, but your kids don't. Do you all understand that in Wilmington, even right now, there basically is an effort to basically make it where you can't learn about it wasn't even a race riot, folks. Race riot is too kind of a word. It was, as Vox said, it was the overthrowing of a black government. What happened in Wilmington was nothing short of the overthrow of a duly elected black government. The white folk came in and said, yeah, it doesn't matter that we're the minority, we're the majority of the money and the majority of the guns. You niggas is out tonight. Yeah, we lost the election, but we won reloading our rifles. And that is what they are still on to this very day. That's the point I'm making to you. They are still on a mission and a campaign to this very day that if they can't win an election, and now they can't win elections, well, that's okay. We'll just gangster our way through it. Yeah, we're not teaching those books. Yeah, you can't watch those movies. Yeah, we're not going to do that. Understand something. I get black folk today who ask me about reading lists to this day. Folks don't have that. They ask me about that to this day. Now they're telling you, oh, they don't even know what movies to watch. And you know what? It's kind of understandable since Hollywood has become one big damn me Sodom and Gomorrah factory. Folks are like, yeah, we can't really trust them. We can't. Hollywood has an agenda most of the time, so people don't really know where to go and what to look at then. They don't even know where to start so they can begin their learning. They don't trust Hollywood, and understandably so. We haven't really had the black folk in Hollywood funding these things properly. So you got black folk depending on a white studio to hopefully maybe fund it, which is why those of us in the grassroots media had to do it ourselves. Even with our meager resources, we had to do it ourselves. Now you got people talking about our documentaries around the world, but it isn't because the Hollywood corporate system has done it. It's not because of them. It's not because of them. And they want it from a reputable source. There's a whole bunch of folks out there, they write books, and can we just keep it real? They sit up here and go on their hotep hallucinations. What they're saying isn't rooted in any real fact. They're talking about their status corrections, or they're approaching you with either distorted or obsolete information. They have a real good habit. They don't really go through their files to clean up the files to discard the obsolete information. They just keep regurgitating it as if it's still viable. So it can make it hard sometimes. It can be a challenge sometimes to sift through the garbage and get to what's real. It can be a challenge to do it. I understand that. The schools are supposed to be aiding in that, but the schools have taken to outright warfare against it. The schools are at war against it. And now to the point that they don't even want to tell your children what they should watch. They flooded black society. We used to have BET. The white folk took it over. Now BET is the buffoon factory. You know, if your HBCUs were worth a damn, you wouldn't necessarily need the new black media. You'd have the black students at the HBCUs. They'd be film students and they'd be telling their own stories. If I could get some DSLRs and some lavalier mics and some lighting and go do that, how the hell is it these college kids are at these campuses and these campuses aren't teaching them the basics? They aren't even teaching them the basics. How the hell is it you can have a whole damn black educational institution and you can't educate these kids on how to set up a camera and some lights and a microphone? But I'll be damned if the school wants to do a damn fundraiser, all of a sudden you got cameras, lights, action. I want y'all to think about that for a few moments. While you're worried about the white schools and the public education systems, just understand the HBCUs are guilty of abandonment and malfeasance. They're not teaching these young black folk who are already chomping at the bit, many of them revolutionary minded, but you let the revolution get stale. So unless they run into us by accident, they don't have any grounding. Nah, you all learn more from me than you learn from any of your HBCU professors. You learn more here. You found out more here. But understand, it isn't because those people didn't know. They were here to maintain the status quo, and that includes the professors at your HBCUs. Y'all got to understand, most of your so-called professors and teachers at HBCUs, they just waiting for a white school to give them a call. Shout out Deion Sanders. Oh boy, let me set that off. Let me just quit now. I think I just stepped in it. All right. Let me just stop there. While you're worried about the football teams at these schools, there are simple things these schools could be doing that would change everything. Harvard and Stanford and Yale and all these schools, they got incubators. The HBCUs ain't incubating nothing except teaching gender studies and cross-dressing. And that's all. The history thrown out the window from your so-called historically black colleges that no longer serve black people. So I understand in the modern era, a lot of folks consume these things digitally. Hey, for those of you from the books and pamphlets era, I got a news flash for you, my dude. Folks today consume stuff digitally. If you don't have a digital avenue for it, man, you're behind. They consume these things digitally. By digitally, I mean with the assistance of an electronic device of some kind. Man, when you and I were kids, audiobooks were a novelty. Today, hell, they can take the text of an audiobook and they got, programs that will read it for you. So making audiobooks is easier than ever. This, not only is this what they're offered, in many cases, this is what they're required. There's a bunch of these folk here. For those of you who don't know, there's a bunch of y'all, but because you're in places like that, where the schools are telling you that you got to buy a tablet. They're sitting up here telling the parents, we don't do books anymore. Everything we're doing is on tablets and laptops. They're telling the parents this. There's a bunch of y'all with kids in school districts, or you seeing your nieces and nephews. They're like, oh, no, we don't do books anymore. They tell us you got to get a tablet. You got to get a Chromebook. You got to have one. You got to have it. It's a requirement. So the folks still sitting up here talking about the paper books era, and there's nothing wrong with paper books, and there are still plenty of paper books out there, but I want you to understand, the young people today, man, look here. Dude, they ain't looking for the bookstore. Amazon isn't even a bookstore to them. It's all about Kindle and ebooks. You better understand, that's how they're consuming it. And if we want to reach them, this is the bottom line. Jason, why do y'all got to make these documentaries? Understand something. When you listen to some coonskin cat wearing boot licking butt dancing bastard sitting up here talking, y'all making money off the community. Because we're not making money off the community. The community is funding this because they understand the necessity of it, because our educational institutions aren't even trying. Public broadcasting doesn't do this. We had Tony Brown decades ago. We ain't got a Tony Brown anymore. You got Skip Gates and Tavis Smiley, neither one serving the people. So the butt dancing clowns sitting up here chewing on their fezzes but producing nothing. We actually got up off our rumps over here and said we're going to get to work so we can talk about where we've been and where we're at. so that they got some knowledge and expertise of it. And now they can buy it on DVD. They can get it on streaming. It's actually available to them in a form in which they can consume it in conjunction with their daily lives. We got to get to these people where they are. The bottom line is we got to reach people where they are, not where we wish they were. And if the audience is on DVD, if the audience is on the internet, if the audience is on ebook, then we better be on DVD, on streaming, and on ebook. We better be there. You know why? Because if we aren't, the white supremacists will be. You don't hear Prager University complaining about books, do you? I won't even bother doing the mic drop. Let me tell you something to the big coconut head idiots out there complaining about those of us actually doing something while you're sitting on your little short stubby butts doing nothing. Prager University isn't complaining about the lack of a book reading list. They just grabbed Carol, what's-her-face, and Candace Owens and put a battery in their back and go shove them on YouTube and let them spit lie after oozing, putrid, disgusting, despicable lie. That's what they do. While you sitting up here trying to lecture somebody about getting their library card. You damn Neanderthal. The Brookings Institute, Forbes, Fox, you don't hear any of them complaining about the lack of books. They were all at the forefront of getting into digital media and being broadcast digitally, and they don't even mention that stuff anymore. These are folks that have actual publications that they're supposed to make money off of publishing, and yet you see them fully invested in it digitally. They're investing in it digitally. So we got to reach the people where they are, not where we wish they were. We got to get them where they're at, not where we wish they were at. We got to start talking to people where they're at. See, this is how you end up 50 damn light years behind everybody else. You want to quibble. Well, you know, real people get a library cards and go and get a book. You know, all you folks here with your iPads and your iPhones and you downloading these books, that's kind of lazy when you think about it right there. And this clown is sitting up here while his kids are learning chapter and verse of Candace Owens and the alt-right and ain't no racism and ain't no white supremacy beamed to them live and direct from YouTube for free. For free. While you're sitting up here trying to hold on to some anachronism, look it up. While you're trying to sit up here and hold on to some obsolete bygone era, we need to be able to speak all the necessary languages, not just the ones that you're comfortable with. So in the 21st century, these young kids, teenagers, adolescents, hell, young adults, do y'all understand that if you're 20 years old today, you've never known a time that there wasn't an iPhone? From the time that you could communicate with the world, there was a cellular phone with a screen that lit up and had pictures on it. If you're 15 years old, you have never known a time that there wasn't a smartphone. You've never known a world that didn't have a smartphone. Just like those from my generation never knew a world that didn't have a television or a radio. I'm sorry, a color television. Hell, they were phasing out black and white then. Some of us are old enough to remember when they were still just straight black and white TVs. They were phasing those out. So if you're 15 or 20 years old, you've never known a time that there wasn't a smartphone. And then you got folks sitting up here telling you about books. Meanwhile, they put the annotated history of the world in the palm of your hand, and you got somebody telling you about go drive to the library. They sound like the horse and buggy salesman of the 1900s. That's why we have to be up to date and ahead of the curve and in touch with reality. So this is the medium upon which these things are being communicated. We have to be able to reach folk where they're at and they're not what we wish they were. And by them saying that these are the mass media outlets and content that they are going to ban, we're not even in the race to be able to even introduce the thoughts to them. We're not even in the race to introduce the thoughts. We're on the sidelines. Hell, we're not even in the sidelines. We're outside the damn stadium trying to scream at the top of our lungs, hoping that somebody can hear us over the crowd. We're not even in the arena. We got to be on the inside, but recognize what's happening on the inside. This is what's going on the inside. This is what they're doing. These folk are sick with it and serious about it. Erasing our history is a must because we have become focused on individuals becoming at least passingly knowledgeable about the major points of our experience in this country, which allows us as a group in this country to compare notes with each other. And because we're able to compare notes, then we're able to say, okay, we found the problem. Okay, we found the problem. We found an issue. Now we know what to actually do. Now we know what to actually do. At least you're starting to get on the same page. That's a scary ass thing in the system of white supremacy. A bunch of individuals getting on the same page. But hell, if I can teach you that white supremacy doesn't even exist, oh well, we got rid of that now, didn't we? We eliminated that before we could even get started, didn't we? Now that we've convinced you that white supremacy didn't even exist, wasn't even there. Hell, it's forbidden for you to talk about it in the classrooms. You're not even allowed to talk about it. You're not even allowed to discuss it. You're not even allowed to discuss it. That's the point that we're at right now. You're not even allowed to discuss it now. But we're going to do that here because I want it in this proper context so that when your kids, you need to start talking to your kids. I remember Minister Louis Farrakhan talking about that decades ago. When your children come home from these killing fields at these schools, you better debrief them. You better debrief them. Find out what the hell they've been telling them in these classrooms. You better start debriefing your children. If you got nieces and nephews, some of y'all might have screwball ass brothers and sisters. You better start debriefing your nieces and nephews. Somebody better talk to them with some sense. If you know you got a coon ass brother or a coon ass sister, you better start debriefing your little nieces and nephews and say, look here, I know your mama is a damn fool. What are they telling you at this school? Well, they told me that George Washington loved his workers. What workers were those? The ones out in the cotton fields. So they mixed the truth with lies. Oh, they admitted that George Washington had a cotton field. Yes. But they told you those folk were just his friendly workers. Yes. He even had a chef who cooked for him. He loved his chef. Him and his chef were good friends. Boy, sit your little ass down, so let me tell you these facts of life here. Let me explain this to you. Let me show you this. When you get back to school, you ask your teacher what I'm about to tell you to ask them. And see what happens when you do. Next thing you know, boy, your kids come back from school the next day, they got a damn hangdog expression on their face. They talking about they got put in the corner of the classroom for 30 minutes. They took the star off their foreheads. What happened to you? The teacher didn't like it. What's wrong? I questioned them about George Washington's chef. What'd they say? They said, who taught you that? I just said, is it true? They told me sit in the back of the classroom till class was over. At that point, you ain't got to teach them white supremacy. They just lived it. Now you ain't got to teach them. They just lived it. Next thing you know, now they're looking at their coon-ass parents. Why is it daddy don't talk to me like that? Mama, they never mentioned this here before. Look, I hate to tell you this. She my sister. I love her, but she's a coon. Her and Candace Owens wearing the same damn coon boots. Truth be told. Anything else you want to know about that, you come talk to me. Don't talk to them. You already messed up to begin with. It's just going to get worse. So just come talk to me. Just come talk to me. This will make it a whole lot easier for everybody because you're just going to be in bad shape to talk to them. This is where we're at today. There is a war to erase our history because our history built this country, but it's also going to shape this country's future. It's going to determine what will happen in the future. That's why it is so essential that they erase it now. And remember what I taught you all here almost 10 years ago. I told you they're going to drop the polite tones, remember? Remember, I told you they're just going to get blatant with it. As their numbers decrease as a percentage of the population, they can't afford to be subtle anymore. They just got to get with it. It's like, hey, everybody sees this, but damn it, we better do it now while we're still in power to even be able to do it. We got to do it now while we're still in power to even be able to do it. Because you'll never be able to get this through anywhere else. Everywhere doesn't avail itself to do what they're doing with the Houston Independent School District. Everywhere doesn't avail itself to that. So if you don't want to have major problems that will be completely intractable, look it up. If you don't want to have major problems that you'll be unable to dig yourself out of in 20 years, when some of these young black folk who've been watching Black Channel films, who've been watching Hidden Colors, who've been reading Dr. Claude Anderson, when they grow of age and they are fully aware of what they're in, they'll be young professionals and young academics and young entrepreneurs, and they're going to be with their heads on straight. At that point, man, game over. It's just a matter of whether we crash fast or crash slow. But the white supremacy game is over at that point, so all hands on deck. Doesn't matter how unscrupulous, everything needs to be employed to go to war against black history. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. When we come back, I've got some more stuff I want to show you here, and then we'll get to your phone calls. Before we do, I want to thank everybody who has contributed to support tonight's program here by PayPal, Cash App, Super Chat, Venmo. Thank you very much to NJ Williams and everybody else there in the Super Chat. We appreciate your support. Big shout out here to Brenda Starr, Mr. Sutherland, Rhonda, Mr. Isaiah, Keith, Andrew L., and everyone else who has contributed to support tonight's program by PayPal, Cash App, Super Chat. It is April, which is something of a holy month to white supremacy, but many of you know that this is New Black Media Appreciation Month, so thank you to everybody there who has shown their appreciation of what we do. We have tried to do our part by being unapologetic, unadulterated, and uncompromising, and we will continue to do so. We're going to take a very brief commercial, non-commercial break. This is the Black Channel.
Venark Motion Pictures, your leading production house for handmade, high-end movies for us, by us. Grab your popcorn and drinks as Venark Motion Pictures presents you with binge-worthy visual entertainment that will leave you breathless. Stream all our titles for free. Visit our website to see Noxious, Noxious 2, Cold Case, and Valley of the Queens. Planned Obsolescence. These power-packed, innovative, and unforgettable flicks tick the boxes of all you could ever want in a movie, and coming soon to keep you at the edge of your seat. Await our most anticipated movie release, Escape from Velocity. Venark Motion Pictures, broadcast excellence. Look for us on Tubi, Amazon, and wherever movies are streamed.
Order yours today to experience all the benefits of Ash Kickin' Natural Body Butter With skin so smooth and soft, you'll thank us for it. Shop Ash Kickin' online. That's ASHKICKIN.com.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. My name is Joe Jackson. I'm a foundational Black American, and I entered the field of IT with the goal of helping the family globally. The industry's been changing, and I've learned a lot. But how did we get here? How do we navigate issues we face in the workplace? How can we get our house in order? Read The Concept and Intricacies of Being Black in IT, now on Amazon, as well as the best-selling Guide to Being Black in IT. Go to beingblackinit.com.
More Threads. A brand owned by a descendant of Black American freedmen was created to uniquely address Black American history and contributions that have been intentionally hidden and suppressed. Use their apparel and more to learn and share the Black American history of Black inventions, heroes, towns, Black business districts, and more. Sign up and support not only a Black-owned business but a movement at www.morethread.co.
Hi, this is Brenda Starr, creator of Poetry with a Purpose and author of the book Pressed But Not Crushed. Pressed But Not Crushed is an anthology of political poems that address current and historical issues in American descendants of slave population and African American population. The book describes slaveries and its residuals, Jim Crow segregation, social depredation, and other relevant issues to American descendants of slaves and African Americans, including the current political climate that does not address our issues.
This is The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. Very glad to be with you all here this evening. And we spoke about the past here. I want to take a moment here to review about the future. Why in the world would all that be very, very necessary for you here today? Why would it be necessary for you? And the reason for it here is because there are some things that you learn going forward. When you start knowing where you've been, then you start talking about things radically differently. Well, Jason, what do you mean about radically differently? I'll give you one example, one case in point here. And there are a lot of folks here. If you want to know one of the reasons why Marcel has always had my respect, it is because Marcel has made it his job to actually show up at these places and take folk to task. He has actually done the footwork. When he actually has an opportunity, he shows up, and not only does he show up, he is competent. He knows what he's talking about. He doesn't fumble the ball. He does a very good job in that regard. Well, recently, Marcel ran into Marianne Williamson, who is yet again claiming that she wants to run for president. And unfortunately for her, the presidential campaign is off to a rough start because Marcel was there doing what Marcel does. Well, Jason, what was that? Well, you remember she said she supports reparations. Unfortunately for her, there was someone there to hold her feet to the fire. When that happened, let's just say the real thing started to come out.
I have to stop you. I am a Jew. What Jews right now are getting reparations?
The Jews who are
Everything you
Holocaust
said until
survivors.
now is true. What?
The Jews who are Holocaust survivors.
But they're not getting reparations from the American government.
No,
They
they're
never
not what
did.
the American government did in 2014, agreed to facilitate a $12 million payback to Holocaust survivors.
That had nothing to do with the U.S. government giving
No,
money
the
to the
U.S.
Jews.
government did facilitate that payback.
That
did happen.
facilitation is with an administrative Germany.
Okay.
Germany paid reparations
Well,
to
so
the
my
Jewish
point is, though,
organization.
but my
United
point-
States-
Now, understand what you're hearing there. The U.S. government facilitated that. Folk, do you know how much you can get done when you got the muscle of the U.S. government behind you? Hell, we wouldn't have any issues today as black people if we had the muscle of the U.S. government actually actively behind us to get other people to do. She's saying, well, it wasn't the U.S. government that paid it. It was the U.S. government leaning on other people. Do you know how much we could get done if we could get the damn U.S. government to lean on the folk who owe us? But then again, the U.S. government owes us. So, but anyway, if they would lean on other people, could you imagine what we could get done if the U.S. government showed up like that? Because the U.S. government has shown up where black people are concerned. They have shown up where the descendants of slaves and foundationals are concerned. They have shown up all right. They've shown up on the side of the white supremacists and the other people. They've shown up on their side to facilitate white supremacy. So they've shown up to help them. So yeah, could you imagine what we could get done if the U.S. government, quote, helped facilitate some things for us? That'd be kind of nice, wouldn't it? So put that in its proper damn context. That's a hell of a lot when you got the U.S. government to, quote, facilitate. That means to lean on people and say, hey, you need to do this over here. Yeah, that would do a hell of a whole lot of wonders for us. That'd do a hell of a lot of wonders for us if we could get some facilitation over here. And furthermore, the U.S. government doesn't facilitate things for everybody. Do you realize what a special dispensation there has to be for the U.S. government to, quote, facilitate something for you? That in and of itself is a special dispensation. That's a special dispensation right there in and of itself. Trying to act like that's some irrelevant thing. Hell no, that's a special dispensation. That's major. Could you imagine showing up at the consulate in Dubai or the consulate in Australia and talking about you got representatives from the U.S. government who are there saying, yes, we're here to help facilitate this $100 billion transaction with new black media. Okay, the U.S. government ain't paying, yeah, but you got the U.S. government's muscle fully backing you? Man, are you kidding? What the hell you trying to pull? That's major. They don't just do that for everybody. Hell, we can't get the damn U.S. government to facilitate a pardon for Marcus Garvey. The man been dead for decades. We can't get that now. We can't get it now.
But the United States government facilitated, and the point still exists. Me, a descendant of American slaves, haven't seen a penny yet. At the end of slavery, and I know you probably know these numbers, $42 to $84 trillion was the value of those of us who were enslaved. And I like the fact that you're running on reparations, but you have $1 trillion as the amount, and that is insultingly low. And I understand that you may have to make it palatable to the American public, but if we want to do what's right, we got to do what's right. And the amount that we are owed is at $70 trillion minimum. If you just do $1 trillion, they said in the 20th century, Black Americans lost $400 billion in just land theft alone. That doesn't go to Jim Crow. That doesn't go to being left from the Homestead Act that gave white Americans $10 trillion and 300 acres. So I love the fact that we're running a reparations plan, but your plan is going to have to get those numbers right. It's got to be lineage based, and the money needs to go directly to us. Because when the Japanese Americans got their money, it didn't go to a council, it went straight to them. Those Holocaust survivors, that money goes straight to them.
That's right.
We deserve to have even more so.
Yeah, so let me say a couple of things. First of all, I honor how you stand up for your ancestors, and I stand up for mine. The United States.
Oh, really, Marianne? I'm honored you stand up for your ancestors, and I'm gonna stand up for mine. Well, she doesn't sound like she's running for president of all the people. Sounds like she's running for president of Jewish people. Did you all hear that? Oh, she's here to stand up for her people. Although, by definition, if you're running for president, aren't you asking to stand up for us? As I said, it didn't take that. You know that's the right button to push because the real damn thing came out. All of a sudden, the real damn thing came out. She was like, yeah, I can't hold this one in, even though you're running for damn... You tell yourself you're running for president, you're actually not, but the real thing came out then, didn't it?
Honor how you stand up for your ancestors, and I...
That's right.
We deserve to have even more so.
Yeah, so let let me say a couple of things. First of all, I honor how you stand up for your ancestors, and I stand up for mine. The United States has not paid $1 of reparations to Jews for the Holocaust. That is number one. And by the way, as far as some of the things you said about Roosevelt, which was true about his treatment of black people, he didn't do well by the Jews during the 2 years when Hitler said they could still leave. So I will not stand here while anti-Semitic tropes are repeated. That's
not anti-Semitic.
You hear that? I will not stand by while anti-Semitic tropes. That's not an anti-Semitic trope, ma'am.
Anti-Semitic tropes are repeated.
That's not anti-Semitic. That's the truth. That's the truth. That's the truth.
The real damn thing came out now, didn't it? That didn't take very long now. It didn't take a bunch of leaning on her. All that took was just a couple of well-placed statements. Next thing you know, the real thing came out. Now, there are some people, let me go ahead and address this right quick. There are some people who get real squeamish. They get real squeamish when we start discussing these numbers, because to most of them, man, what y'all talking about over there? $30 trillion, man, you niggas crazy, man. Ain't no way. Man, that's the whole GDP of the country for the next 50 million, 100,000, 50 million, gajillion years. Let me explain something to you people. When you are in negotiations on something, you don't offer people your floor. Some of y'all are pathetic negotiators. This is why you can't be. Some of y'all are damn me Benjamin Crump. Some of y'all went to the Ben Crump school of negotiating against white supremacists. You just coming in the door with, look here, anything you can throw out here, I appreciate that. When you are in a negotiation, you don't sit up. Let me tell y'all something. If Johnny Cochran was alive today, that man would be saying $100 trillion. If Johnny Cochran were alive today, he'd be saying $100 trillion. When you go into a negotiation, you don't sit up here offering them your floor. In the world of sales, we call it the floor, which is the minimum that you're willing to accept. You don't tell them the minimum you're willing to accept. You tell them the maximum that you think you can demand. You hit them with the max. You hit them with the top shelf, and you do exactly what Marcel is doing. You don't quiver in your voice. You don't mumble the number. You don't stumble over the words. You don't equivocate. You don't sit up here and mush. Well, you know, I mean, $1 trillion. That's good. I mean, really though is maybe about, you know, about 20, 25, 30 trillion. You know, what was that number again? Well, you know, 20, 10, 20. This is how niggas. Jason, did you say niggas? This is how niggas sit up here and talk themselves out of things. We sit up here talking ourselves down. Remember what I taught you all. One of the first millionaires I had a chance to work for, he sat there and said, Jason, the price is the price. You don't move on your price. You let them figure out how they're going to pay it, but you never move on your price. The price is the price. See, this is how we sit up here and mess ourselves over, because this is what these folk are used to. I want my generation and Generation X and Z and whatever comes after that, I guess -01. Y'all understand something. The civil rights generation wanted to make people comfortable. Where the hell did that get us? This is about making folk comfortable. You have to be able to say in a straightforward voice exactly what it is you want, because what the civil rights generation taught America was that if you just sit still long enough, black folk will eventually get up and walk away. That you don't have to actually give them anything. That if you just stand firm and keep telling them no, then they'll just eventually give up their demands and just say, okay, well, what are you willing to give me? And then they'll just go ahead and flick some crumbs off the table, and back home you go to the same damn messed up situation you came from. That's what the civil rights generation taught the world. that you can get rid of black folk if you just say no and then just leave them standing there. That they will not demand more, and then if they don't get it, they won't start sitting up here agitating and making worse trouble. All you got to do is just stand still and say no, and eventually they'll just give up and give in and walk away with nothing, or whatever little crumbs you want to flick at them. Understand that's the difference. And we have been working for the last decade to teach them that the old way is dead and gone. It's a new day. And we are not going to sit here and say we're not here to make you comfortable. We're specifically here to make you uncomfortable. So no, the number is 30, 40 trillion. Yeah, that's a good start. That's a good damn start. Because you know what it means? It means that it'll make sure that even if you only hit close to that number, everything you needed got taken care of. Everything you needed got taken care of. That's what it means. Everything you needed done got taken care of. People, let me tell you something. Jason, why are you saying 30, 40 trillion dollars in reparations? That's why. That's not ancient history happening here. This is today happening here. This is the here and now happening here. This is where we are today, not where we were in 1823 or even 1923. This is what we got to deal with right now, today. Right here in the here and now. You damn right, 30, 40 trillion is a good start. Let the bidding start there, because nobody else is watching their history of historic brutalization that has defined a continent. We are the ones who've been worst affected. Nobody else is watching their history get erased in real time. And it didn't take thousands of white people to do it. It took, by their own admission, just one or two. So let me get this straight. One or two white people can decide what all the black folk at one school get to see or don't get to see. And they weren't even elected. So understand, now you're dealing with what we've called for you all, we told you this over the course of the last decade and a half, deputizing white supremacy by sending that thing out and saying, we let everybody know that we're going to show the movie, and we sent it with permission slips. So if anybody wanted to object, it wouldn't be getting our hands dirty. So we're outsourcing it to other people. That's deputizing white supremacy. That's deputizing it. You've allowed anybody at that school, anybody in that district, now you've deputized them to say, by the way, if you want to help us out, all you got to do is write a letter, and oh yeah, we won't even demand that you stand by it. We won't even demand that your name is out there, so you got to stand by this. Hell, we don't even know if it's a real person, because they redacted the name before they told anybody. Hell, how do you know it ain't the damn, what's her name, Macarena's, whatever her name is? How do you know it's not her? We don't know who it is. But you're telling me that one parent can sit up here and say, one white parent can sit up here and say, we don't want to teach American history. You damn right we need reparations. This is what's happening to the descendants of the slaves today. And it's not just in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, down the list. This is happening to us right now. You damn right it's in the trillions. You know why? Because you haven't stopped doing what you were doing. And this is our proof that the campaign of systemic racism and degradation, specifically against the descendants of the slaves, this is our proof that it's still ongoing today. It isn't dead and gone. This isn't your ancestors who did it. This is you now. And the process has never ended. It's never stopped. It's continued unabated and uninterrupted. These are not your ancestors doing it. This is you. I want you all to not just listen to me. I need for you to incorporate what I'm saying so that when you meet these arguments, folk in your family, the little kids who are being misinformed, you can explain it to them as plainly as I said it. This isn't something that happened 150 years ago. This is going on right damn me now. So yes, you damn right. The process of brutalizing us continues. It never stopped. It was never interrupted. And this is our proof that it never stopped. Therefore, the meter on our reparations is still running. You need to hurry up and pay this damn thing because the meter is still running. The ticket is still running. You're still abusing us now. You are still abusing us to this day. We are still absorbing grievances now. Right now, tonight. You better believe the meter is still running. You better believe we're speaking about it as a present progressive. You better believe we're forward looking. You better believe we didn't stutter when we said trillions. You better believe, we know exactly what that number is. You damn right. You damn right. Absolutely. But if they can erase your history, then they can erase your mind. And if they can erase your mind, then you never even think to remember this. Because understand, what they think they're going to do, they think they're going to stretch this out for another 40, 50 years. That's what they think they're going to do. And their plan is that all of us who made the most noise, if they can just stall us long enough, then hopefully the next generation will be so concerned with cell phones or VR glasses or whatever 3D displays or whatever the hell comes next, and whatever tennis shoes they have, it'd be like Back to the Future, they can walk on air or something. Hopefully your kids will be, the next generation or the generation after that will be so concerned and so absorbed with those things that they won't even be fighting like we are. Hell, as far as they're concerned, we'll take a look at the Civil Rights generation. You see, the World War II generation was kicking things up. The Civil Rights generation, part of them was in the streets. A lot of them was just looking to go home. We stiff-armed them and offered them drugs and interracial sexual access, and they went for it like a dog to a bone. So now their kids and grandkids are here. Well, if we stiff-arm them, don't worry, they cut from the same cloth. We'll stiff-arm them, and they'll find something else to follow up on. They'll find something else. That's what they think is going to happen. It's our job to show them that's not what's going to occur. However, you might disagree. Therefore, the telephone lines are now open. The number is 646-787-1933. That's 646-787-1933. Your personal access code to the blackest radio program in existence, the only one of its kind on planet Earth today. As always, you are welcome to join us. We're doing tonight's program here because it is essential that we remember this, that we remember that this is the war going on. And I know that when I started the program, a lot of you didn't think I was going to end on this note by saying, bringing this 720 degrees, that yes, trying to erase our history in the history books is proof that the ongoing white supremacist assault on us continues to this day unabated. We are being singled out because of our lineage. We're being singled out because of our lineage. They're making laws specifically targeting us. They're taking action specifically targeting us because of our lineage. And that assault on us and our lineage continues to this very day. No, you ain't gonna throw a couple $100 million here and call it a day. No, you're not. The hell you are. No, you're not. We're going to go ahead and hit up the phone lines here. Let me get caller from area code 571. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, that's official MGTOW from Woodbridge, Virginia. What's going on with you?
Official MGTOW. Now, are you here to babble?
Nah, you're babbling. So let me ask you something, man. What is your affiliation with Gary L. Bledsoe?
Caller from area code 310. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Jason. My name is Derek out of Los Angeles. I just want to say about the whole books thing. Like, we got to meet the children where they are, because white supremacy is forever adapting and evolving. So they always find us and meet us where we are, and they target us all the time. So we got to meet the children where they are. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like if we continue to fall on that, oh, read books, then that's just going to breed us to become the next old niggas that you described for their generation. We won't get the respect from the last generation that we don't respect. You see what I'm saying? From
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when you see music change,
you know,
or trends change or whatever. You know, young
Right.
people will listen to their elders if they truly believe that the elder that they're listening to understands where they're at. Young people are going to listen to you, number one, if you are in life where they want to be, and number two, if they feel you understand where they are. If they feel confident in those two things about you, they will listen. What I've done for the last decade and a half, 2 decades, is a testament to that. Young people will listen. Problem, most of these older folk want to sit up here and ball out, go to the Cadillac dealership or the Mercedes dealership, and sit up here and act like they're in an island by themselves. Then they wonder why it is the young folk don't listen to them. Because they can't identify with you, because they can see that you so obviously don't identify with them. If you're sitting here taking a look at their iPhone as if it's damn me E.T. spaceship, then you just lost them. But if they can see that you understand, what that communicates to them is that you can be bothered and you care enough to understand. That matters to a young person. That you're not talking to them just lecturing you and wagging your finger, that you've actually taken out the time to learn about their life and their experience, at least at a basic perfunctory level. Now they feel like they're talking to someone who understands, as opposed to them feeling, you're just talking that way because you're out of touch. When you can show them, no, I'm perfectly in touch with what's going on. Then they're like, oh, so there's something I don't see. Now they'll listen.
Right.
So you have to, what I'm saying is you got to be multisyllabic. You can't be monosyllabic.
Right.
You have to be for those of you who don't know, you can't just be monosyllable. You have to be able to speak in more than one language. You can't just be able to speak one or two words. You have to be able to speak in more than one language. You can't just speak about where you were. You got to speak about where you were, and then you have to be able to connect it to where they are. You do those two things, you got an audience. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 662. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yeah, this is Aaron calling from Tupelo, Mississippi.
All right, Aaron from Tupelo, what's on your mind?
Yes, this is what you were talking about. That's the reason why it's so important. What happened last week, why it should be an outrage, because you know what that lady did. She kind of spilled the beans about what I would call phase 2, and you know, even though you got like black guys like Anton Daniels trying to take up for her, you know what I'm saying, bend the press. But really what she did, she spilled the beans too early, because what she said about Roots, they saying, oh, that's true. You know what I'm saying? Why are they trying to take our books away? That's gonna be the next phase, misinformation. So, you know, Roots wasn't all the way accurate. You know what I'm saying? Let's pull the movie, let's pull the books. You know, Rosa Parks she wasn't the first one to refuse to give up her seat. Let's pull that. So, you know, Malcolm X movie, that wasn't all the way right. Let's pull that too. You know what I'm saying? Misinformation is what they gonna use next, because we don't want our kids to feel bad.
You make a good point. This is like
history.
literary character assassination. You make a very good point. This is character assassination of your literature. They've done it to people in real life.
Right,
Here it's
exactly.
like, oh, if you got a criminal record, that make it okay for the police to shoot you in the back. So if we can find something here to make some spiritual argument against these things, yep, we can go ahead and remove the whole damn thing. Never mind the fact that your history books as presented to you are filled with fallacies at best and fabrications at worst. Don't let that get in the way. Don't let that get in the way. They love to, they love to tell you, like, for example, that Robert E. Lee didn't own slaves. Well, that's actually not true. Now, they didn't come from his side of the family, but they have a number of folk that they've used that shield for. So they say it to you in very tricky language. Even though they know what it is, the conclusion you're going to draw from it, they deliberately say it in tricky language So I can show you incident after incident, case after case, where they've been doing this in your so-called history books, and that's okay. But for black folk in general here, I can see what you're talking about there. That's actually a very good point to make. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 646. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Onan from Queens.
Onan from Queens. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. So shout out to Marcel Dixon in his fight for our reparations for Foundation of Black Americans. He's been a wonderful advocate for the cause. Also, I want to send a shout out to you and Professor Black Truth and Tariq Nasheed and all the other people that are involved with the New Black Media. Happy Black Media Appreciation Month. And I'll land my plane there, B1.
B1, brother, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller from area code 601. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Sarah calling from Vicksburg, Mississippi.
All right, Sarah from Vicksburg. What's on your mind?
Thank you so much for teaching our children our history. My father was a World War II veteran, and he wasn't able to get a GI loan. And the other day, I thought about all of these years, these black churches have been depositing all of their money in these white banks on Monday, and that's the very money that all of these white subdivisions was built with, and blacks weren't even allowed to live in those subdivisions. In fact, I worked at a mortgage company 45 years ago, and I used to see where they had covenants. Even in Chicago, a friend called and saw when she went to get a loan on her house, you know, where they go back and they trace the previous owners, and there were actually covenants where we were not allowed to live, and it's still going on. But thank you so much, and especially for bringing up Wilmington, North Carolina. That was in the 1800s. That was a beautiful, thriving town. And that's not the only, that they did this all over the country. I remember in Carrollton, Georgia, they ran black people out of that town. But peace and blessings, and keep the good up work, sir. Peace.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. And by the way, Wilmington is still a very beautiful place. Wilmington still is. However, Wilmington is a city under siege. It is an area under siege, and it's an area under dispute because now they want to seal records. The librarians there and the clerks of court don't want to release the records of what happened in Wilmington, which lets you know that this is an area that is still under dispute. It's still under dispute today. They know we haven't gone away. They know we're still here. They know that we're looking into it and saying, hey, by the way, about what you did to our grandfathers, we're here to get the records of that. So it is an area still under dispute. It's still under dispute. Wilmington's still a beautiful place, but they don't want you to sit here and recognize that. They don't want that. They don't want the area to become prosperous because they understand that an area that is still under dispute, if you make it prosperous, then that becomes our inheritance. So what they do is, just like I explained to you last night about the tornadoes in Tornado Alley, they make sure these places stay impoverished. They make sure that they stay impoverished. Everywhere you all go, unless they've been able to preclude it. You see, in New York City, they don't have a problem with the annihilation of Seneca Village. You drop the damn metropolis on top of it. You encroach Central Park. Take a look at the history of Times Square. We can go down the list because there's actually a number of different neighborhoods, not just one. So they've been terrified at the idea of allowing these areas to experience and gain their true prosperity. Let me give y'all a case in point right now. I'm going to tell you exactly where I got it from. Reventure Consulting. Reventure Consulting. You can look him up on YouTube. Now, granted, some of what he says is hyperbole. There is not a housing crash. There's not going to be a housing crash, nothing like 2000. If there is, it's just going to be a slight correction, nothing like 2008. Folks trying to get their clicks and things. But he was talking about the areas in America that have experienced the most gains in housing in like the last year. He just did a video about it. Number one place, Myrtle Beach. The number one place was Myrtle Beach. Now, if you've been to Myrtle Beach and seen what they're doing, they've done messed up and built out the coastline and the beach down there in Florida. Now you got a whole bunch of investment coming into Myrtle Beach now. I've been on the strip down Myrtle Beach. Half of it's great. The other half of it is something from the first 48. Although I imagine that won't last very long either. But they talking about Myrtle Beach was at the top of the list. But you know what should also be near there? Wilmington. But we're not going to do that for Wilmington because you see, Myrtle Beach is no longer under dispute. Let me go ahead and tie this together for you. Let me name another beach for you. Bruce's Beach. Now, y'all got to understand, Bruce's Beach is not the place that I just talked about. Bruce's Beach has been the place that I've been to. I've been to Manhattan Beach. There. When you take Rosecrans, just take it all the way straight on out from Compton, basically, all the way there. Not very far from the airport. Beautiful area. And they do have businesses there, but the businesses are back up at the top of the hill. At the bottom of the hill are all the damn houses. They got all those houses down there at the bottom. They got the restaurants and stuff up there at the top. And they're local restaurants. They're not chain restaurants. They're local restaurants. Shout out El Segundo. So they're local restaurants. And my point is, they changed the zoning so that you couldn't have businesses down there in that area. Yeah, but Bruce's Beach had the business right there, where them houses are today. That was their inn. That was their bar. That was their restaurant. That was their nightclub. That was all right there. And then you changed the zoning of it to say we are going to preclude being able to ever do this again. We're going to preclude ever being able to do this again. So that area was not under dispute, not until the last couple of years when we showed up. Then it was back under dispute again. So these areas that are still under dispute, you notice that they change the rules. They try to limit economic development. They try to keep it real small and real sparse until that's finally resolved. Now, I'm going to tell y'all something else. Now that they've bought out the Bruce family, now that they've bought the family out, mark my words, you're going to see some type of economic development. They're going to do something about that zoning there now. Now that that issue has finally been resolved with Charles and Willa Bruce's heirs, now that they finally got the heirs to legally sign away their rights and sign away their grievance, look for Manhattan Beach, look for California to do something. It's not going to be major. They're not going to build a hotel. I think it's too near the airport, and it doesn't avail itself to that. But mark my words about that zoning. You haven't seen the last zoning change in that area. They changed it so you can't do business development there, but mark my words, now that you finally settled the issue with the Bruce family, now that they can't do anything else, now that you can't bring this up as an issue again, watch them come back now and say, you know what? We've been reconsidering changing the zoning. Yeah, now, maybe we can put a small recreation center, a small club, maybe we can do that now. Now that that issue is gone. Mark my words, when these areas are out of dispute, then you're going to see things change. Caller from area code 332, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Area code 332, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name?
Okay, caller is busy. Caller from area code 469, you're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
It's Thomas calling from Dallas, Texas.
Thomas from Dallas, what's on your mind?
Yeah, man, I want thank you again for having a great broadcast, man. Also, Marcel done a great job, man. That white woman it's like she wants to call him a nigga right off point, man. I mean, he had that woman hot, man. And it's another part of that video where she actually ran up on his table. I mean, I hope you find that video. But yeah, man, the Bruce's Beaches and all of the Black Wall Streets, man, that stuff's still going on today. I mean, look at Turkey Leg Hut. I mean, those people that have a hard time down in Houston, man, because they won't. Whenever there's black people that start businesses on their own, and we didn't have to go to white people for the loans or for the money, oh, it's a problem. And that was the cause of them going and burning up the Black Wall Street. Those people came out of slavery and built successful black communities without white people. So yeah, we was a threat off Jump Street coming out of slavery, and it still goes on today. And for that 6-year-old black girl, man, that was the bravest little black girl in history. I mean, to go to school by herself and be threatened. They was threatening to kill her. They was threatening to set her on fire. I mean, to go through that as a 6-year-old, I couldn't have done that. I mean, that little girl went through a lot. Even when she got in the classrooms, the abuse didn't stop. So yeah, I think she passed away not too long ago. But man, that was a brave young girl.
I don't know if she did or not, because there are some folks who were saying here earlier that she was still alive, but certainly the idea that you can assault our children, that is something in particular. That's the whole idea, is that black folks will back down and allow folks to assault their children. See, there's a reason why. Some of y'all may not like it, and I understand that, and I'm not saying I necessarily condone it in every case, but let me tell y'all something. There's a reason why black families, black parents, black mothers, black fathers, there's a reason why they show up at the schools and turn up. Because they understand, like, you're trying to target their children when they're not there. They send their kids off to school, they put their kids on a bus, and they go about their business at their job. While they're at their job, you sitting in this damn classroom, got their child cornered off by themselves, and then you gonna practice some white supremacy. So there's a reason why some of these folks show up at these schools and they turn the hell up. There's a reason for that, because we've had a history of these schools targeting our children. And not everybody gonna sit back and dance a jig and be okay with that. Not everybody is gonna do that. So some folks understand that. Some folks come from the old school. Some folks understand you don't let them pull no mess like that with your kids. You don't do that. We already been there. These are always precursors to going at us. And if they see that you will allow them to attack your children with impunity, don't you know that is an attack on the bloodline? That is an assault on the bloodline. So they have always done that with your children, deliberately so. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Miracle 424. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
What's up, Jason? How you doing? This is Rashad from Los Angeles by way of Houston.
Okay, Rashad, you are too far from your phone.
Oh, sorry about that, brother. How about now? Is that better?
Okay, what's on your mind?
I'm actually a teacher over at Houston Independent Unified School District, and everything you're saying about education is about history is absolutely correct. The curriculum has been just beaten down to the bone, to the point that the only places where you actually see black people is in slavery, and they took out all the information about the tri-dynastic empires of some guy, Mali and Ghana, and you still have these teachers that are out there still targeting our kids. I mean, the school where I work particularly, I know last year I had some of the black kids that they weren't students of mine, but they told me about a teacher that's no longer there anymore. Many of the racist things that she has said to them, and how they were, she was targeting them, and how hard she's been working in the class, but yet she's still getting a seat on everything. And come to find out, I remember one of the luncheons that we had, I sit up and talk to this woman, and out the blue, she came out and just started talking crazy about black people, started talking about reparations, and I had to, had to check her. She started saying things like, "Well, there wasn't slavery up in the North." I'm like, "What are you talking about? Slaves built Wall Street, literally. The same thing with Harvard University was built by slaves. These are the kind of people that are out here teaching our children, and the fiasco that I had with Black History Month this year was just out of control. Where I had even some of my colleagues trying to push our students, celebrating Wakanda and Black Panther for Black History Month and insulting the entire celebration. Not saying that we should keep Black History Month just to a month. It is offended, as Dr. Khalid Muhammad said, but at the same time, it needs to be done with some decorum and some dignity.
Well, it certainly needs to be done with an agenda, because these folks have an agenda in what they're doing. And I hope that the one thing we take away from this time period in history is that we have a clearly placed Black agenda that is unapologetic about what we mean and what we're saying. Because these folk are just fabricating events now. They're not even fabricating history. They're just making up science fiction and telling us, well, here you go. And it is a race war. They're targeting your children. They have no problem doing that. Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Also, one other thing here. Thomas called in about this here before. Let me go ahead and see if I can show that to you all, because there's actually a couple of things. I want to talk about this also.
I ran for office, and I'm running yet again against the king maker, James Clyburn. But my attitude, if you're the king maker, then your district should be living like royalty, and they're not. So I know exactly how they try to shame you.
So there's good little Miss Marianne Williamson. That's cool and everything. She wants to talk about how America didn't do this and didn't do that for the Jews. Yeah. He wants, Marcel came with his receipts here. So, by the way, he came with his receipts on that. I'll go ahead and put a link here in the chat room to that particular thread on Twitter. I'll put a link in the chat room to that. But by the way, yeah, that happened. That happened. All right, caller from area code 929. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Jason. This is Daryl from Chicago.
Daryl from Chicago. What's on your mind?
Excellent broadcast as always, Jason. And the same with the one that was last night. That was another one as well that led into this. First off, the couple of previous callers talked about the Black History Month. To me, Black History, number one, is should be celebrated every day that we walk the face of this earth. That's number one right off the bat. Number two is that take my hat off to Brother Marcel there for going in depth and going in on that, and really just pulling out the truth out that lady, because, she's trying to sell a bill of goods and it just didn't work. And the third thing is the excellent situation that the New Black Media has been putting out here. I remember the third or fourth show. Well, I shouldn't say show, your third or fourth broadcast. And you talked about this. And sure enough, everything that you said is coming to pass. And people should really be listening and tuning in and understanding what's going on and being aware. I'm the second generation of three generations of teachers in my family. And my daughters, two of my daughters are teaching now. And they talk about this all the time. This is a big time conversation. And it's really, really ironic how they've been trying to change the books. Even my mother taught 40 years. And she said they were trying to change the books back when she was teaching.
Yeah, time. But the difference back then, though, brother, was we had segregated schools, so you had Black teachers who were actually serving the interests of the Black students there. So that was a different thing. Right. Today, you've got Black teachers competing to get hired at a white school or in a white district. So what they're doing or what they're willing to do is totally different. We actually had folk back then who were, it was basically in contrast to everything else. Not only were they pursuing a career as professional educators, they lived in the communities. That's the whole thing about it. We lived next door to the doctors and the lawyers and the dentists and the school teachers. They weren't people on the other side of town or living in another city. We lived with them back then. They were right there next to us. So we had a whole lot of power in that. The real thing was we were sold on the idea, the civil rights generation was sold on the idea that that wasn't good enough. And in reality, what we're realizing today is the problem wasn't separate but equal. The problem was fully funded versus underfunded. You could have left us the damn way we were as long as our schools got the funding they were supposed to get. So what we were told was, well, we're not going to give your schools the funding they need to get. We're going to just move y'all around. We're just going to move you around, and that's what we're going to do. No, it would have been far better if the schools we were in just got the funding we were supposed to have and leave us alone like you do the Jews, the Arabs, and every damn body else. See, the Latinos basically can create de facto Latino schools with that language barrier. Simply by them holding on to their language, they can essentially create a de facto Latino school. If enough of their kids show up and enough of their kids speak the language and the parents smack them across the back of the head before they go out the door and say, now you know no English now. No hablo inglés. You speak Spanish. Don't do that. And those of y'all who, a bunch of the states now, it used to just be confined to California, Texas, and Florida, but now it's as high up as Tennessee, the Carolinas, Missouri, South Dakota. Yes. You know, you got the kids, the parents show up at the school. If they're with a teacher who is bilingual, they won't keep up the facade very long. But if you're like a black teacher, they'll sit there and pretend they don't know no English. Well, I don't know any English at all. Can you get someone speaking Espanol? So what they've done is they've used that barrier to create de facto Latino schools. As black folk, we didn't need desegregation. We simply needed to have proper funding, and we would have been just fine from there. Imagine 3 generations of black children seeing the smartest people that they talk about Neil deGrasse Tyson today, but imagine having 3 generations of kids who that's what they grew up around all the time. They grew up around Cliff Huxtable all the time. That wasn't special. They grew up around Claire Huxtable all the time. That wasn't special. That was just expected. They would be fine with that. You wouldn't have the mess that you got today. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 417. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Al from Springfield, Missouri. I just want to say, I'm glad you brought up this subject because what we're witnessing is something eerily similar to what they did in South Africa, if you may recall, in 1976, where you had all the black students in South Africa rise up against the old white apartheid regime, where they were trying to force them to speak their language of Afrikaner language and also making them erase all the past history, what they did to the Khoi, the Sand people, and try to, make their own history claim that the land was there, that the land was vacated. They were the first people. And students, rose up against that. But as you all know, 114 students got shot and killed. And so what we're witnessing is that the right wing, the Ron DeSantis and all these other governors are taking a page out of the old South African, white South African regime for the curriculum and everything else, and trying to force it in all these school districts here.
Yeah, you have to understand, America taught the world white supremacy. And I'm not being hyperbolic about that. America taught the world sophisticated white supremacy. Remember, Nazi Germany, Adolf Hitler, they learned segregation laws from America. When they overthrew the Weimar Republic, they learned those tactics from America. They learned those tactics, the brown shirts, watching the Ku Klux Klan. They learned how to implement an apartheid system from the United States. The United States didn't learn it from other people. The United States created it and perfected it, and all these other folks simply said, well, hey, we just copy what they did. South Africa, copy what they did. Nazi Germany, copy America. A lot of folks think that America learned that from Nazi Germany. Damn lie. It's the other way around, literally. There are Jewish rabbis who've written books about that. The fact that, by the way, America taught Nazi Germany. They learned that because you didn't have those things in place under the Weimar Weimar Republic. It was only once they overthrew them, they said, yeah, America, they're already doing it over there. What they were doing with sterilization and things like, America's already shown us how to do that. America's done that. Hell, we can just kick it into hyperdrive now. If they can do it in America, if they can do it over there, eugenics and all that, hey, all we got to do is follow their playbook. And then now that we're under a more autocratic government, it doesn't rely on the Democratic vote. We got an autocratic government. Hell, he'll just rubber stamp all of this. Watch us kick this into hyperdrive. Thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Let me get caller area code 229. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Good evening, Brother Jason. How you doing this evening? My name is Rob from Valdosta.
All right, Rob from Valdosta. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I appreciate the broadcast. Excellent as always. I took a trip yesterday to, had to go through Adel, Hinesville, to Brunswick. And I see these plantations that still got old shacks on them, quarters. And I'm thinking, like, how's these structures still standing? And like you spoke on the other night, or was it last night, about the weather that we have in the South, in the deep South. And they're still standing. Now, a lot of people, that just goes to show slavery is not ancient history. It's our history, but it's not ancient. And they're trying to take this history books out of school. And I'm seeing, from where I'm at over here in western South Georgia, all the way over to the coast. You see these plantations, actual plantations, but they want to take the history. Now, these are going to be the people that teach our kids history. That's the point I want to get to. If they taking the history books out of the schools, now you want these people teaching our kids history?
Yeah, especially when you're taking into account that when you talk to them, the folks who own these plantations and stuff, what's the first thing they tell you? They're with Skip Gates, when you talk to the guy, we don't talk about the slaves. When they talk, I'm inheriting the plantation from my dad, and he said, by the way, we don't talk about the slaves. Think that over for a minute. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Now, yeah, you're going to trust them to teach about slavery, and the very folk who owned it, the first thing they were taught was, yeah, we don't talk about the slaves. Now, notice that's a very diabolical thing, by the way. Do you realize how diabolical that is? It isn't that they don't know about the slaves. They know about them. But they say we don't talk about them. So when you're in the company of black people, you play dumb. Hey, don't you own that plantation over there? Well, yeah, I inherited it. Yeah, where are the slave quarters? Slave quarters? I don't really know much about slave quarters, I don't really know that. That guy literally sat there and told Skip Gates, if you all think about it, what he's saying, we don't talk about the slaves. His father told him we don't talk about the slaves. What is he telling him? If anybody asks you, play dumb. Yeah, you know about the damn slaves. You know who they were. You know where we kept them. Those are the slave quarters over there. How could he maintain the property if he didn't know all the parts of the property? He's maintaining it because he knows all the parts. But his daddy told him, now, if anybody comes around asking you, you don't know nothing about no slaves. And don't ask me about the slaves, just in case I get some dumbass little son who decides he wants to run his mouth too much. I ain't gonna talk to you about the slaves either. So understand something, when it comes to the destruction of history, they are going scorched earth. They're not even telling their heirs what they did, because they're worried that the heirs might not stay on code. So now they're like, look here, if I don't teach your little cornball ass what's going on, you won't be able to get off code. I'm going to rob those Negroes of their history, and I'm going to rob you of their history too, just to make sure you don't ever get any bright ideas. You won't even be able to get off code. The only way you could truly get off code is if you sold the property. But anything short of that, you won't be able to snitch us out, because I'm not even going to tell you what we did. That's how I'm going to make sure you stay on code. And then I don't have to worry about the kids and the grandkids. Y'all are going to be on code whether you like it or not. Caller Mary code 843. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, this is Phil from Beaufort. My voice is gone. Beaufort, South Carolina.
Phil from Beaufort. What's on your mind?
I appreciate this broadcast tonight, and I'm not gonna get started on Myrtle Beach because I was born there, and I'm definitely not gonna get started on these plantations. But Ruby Bridges is not like these other people who went to these that desegregated these schools. She's not like Harvey Gantt at Clemson and James Meredith at Mississippi. Those are old people. She is young. Her kids are younger than me. So she's like, if that was, I don't know exactly what year, but she's still alive, and she's not an old person. She's just, and so this is them erasing stuff that kind of just, not just happened, but is recent. She's not like Rosa Parks, and so I'm glad you brought this up. And people need to. I don't know what to say about their fragility, but she
went to school in 1960, so this all happened in 1960 when this happened. So you're right.
That wasn't that long ago.
No, brother. They're not going back to antebellum slavery. They're like, hey, antebellum slavery. Our history is so recent, we can't even go back to antebellum slavery anymore. They're like, look here, we just going to have to erase everything up until the iPhone. We're just going to erase everything. Understand something, that's going to include Rodney King. They're going to have to get rid of all of it. Basically, their policy now is going to be, look, if your folks didn't teach it to you, we're just going to play dumb. Now, think about that for a few moments. Your schools are supposed to be educating you about all these things, and now they're taking on what they call it, freedom from information. It used to be freedom of information. Now it's freedom from information. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller Mary code 510. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Jason. This is Black Voltron calling out of East Oakland, California.
Black Voltron, what's on your mind? Black Voltron, wake up. Okay, Black Voltron has been abducted. Caller Mary code 720. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
This is Jesse Paris out of Denver, Colorado.
All right, Jesse out of Denver. What's on your mind?
What's going on is our tangibles. We are demanding $100 trillion for past, present, and future atrocities that have been brought against our people and continue to be brought against our people in 2023. And enough is enough of this madness. They're going to cut the check. We over here at the New Black Media, we are coming for what is rightfully ours. And on the 55th anniversary of the death of MLK, Denver is having a mayoral election, and I am one of the candidates. So I ask all your viewers to write me in if they live in Denver, Colorado, on the ballot by Tuesday.
All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Let me get caller from area code 267. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Yes, this is Tammy calling from PA Williamsport. I thank you for this particular broadcast that you have done. I just want to make a comment about the woman. Marcus was questioning her about reparation, how quick she got defensive. And it's funny because what I know is people, any group that has anything to do with slavery, they do become defensive. Of course, the Jews had a lot to do with, funding the slavery. Other groups like the Arabs or even the Africans, when you bring it up, they get very defensive. But I love the fact that he stood his ground. So thank you for tonight and have a good day.
Thank you very much for giving us a call here tonight. Look, we can't, my thing is we can't be shy about these things. I don't want us to become monolithic. We're not going to sit up here and just name one. This is why I don't want folks sitting up here talking about, well, the Jews did this and Jews did that. Wait a minute. White society did this. Everybody gets their bill. I'm not going to sit up here and focus on one group over another. Everybody gets a bill. We're not going to focus on just one group and leave out the others. We're not going to focus on a bunch of other groups and leave out the one. Everybody who owes a bill got to get one. Everyone who owes a bill got to get one. You got to get this bill. You got to have it. Everyone's got to be presented with their invoice. I need you to pay right here. Until then, we ain't got nothing to talk about. Call of America code 612. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hi, Jason. This is George from Minnesota. I have one observation about what's going on. One, they are banning TikTok because it is a platform where you can teach videos and not censored by the racism white supremacy system. That's why you see them going hard on TikTok. And then, secondly, as far as reparations are concerned, the Foundation of Black Americans and other migrants should be helping ask. The Foundation of Black Americans should ask unapologetically. And migrants who understand, because we all are being protected and covered by the Foundation of Black Americans, who understand what the gig is, should, as a matter of responsibility and obligation, stand shoulder to shoulder with you people to ask unapologetically. It is for Foundation of Black Americans. So it's not something that, the Foundation of Black Americans is past the era of, negotiating or asking what is going to happen. It is a right. It is an obligation. It's a debt that must be paid. People might say that how they're going to pay it. Well, it's a loan. They can loan it and pay it over the years. So we've gone past that era of asking. Of asking whether it is demanding now. And secondly, the aspect of taking it out of schools, there's taking the actual history out of schools. To me, I see that they are trying to keep the society ignorant. This is the information era. You can't hide that anymore. And by so doing, and the fear is that when they see the dominant society now getting the information and they are kind, putting it out that, yes, Foundation of Black Americans, they deserve reparation, particularly on platforms like TikTok. It scares the crap out of them. So that's why you see them attacking TikTok. And secondly, that's why you see them doing everything possible to change or erase the history of America. But it's not going to work. So we keep on asking, we keep on supporting, and we keep on pushing forward. Thank you, Jason.
Well, you make a very good point about that. America's talking, the U.S. government wants to say so much here about, TikTok and the information is being turned over to the Chinese Communist government. Okay, but the American tech companies have been sitting up here and stealing our information from the beginning. Facebook has been stealing our information from the beginning. So that's okay? That's all right? That's okay for Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. Mark Zuckerberg can steal all the information he wants. Google can steal all the information, know your exact location, listen in on your private conversation. Amazon's Alexa system, for those of you who don't understand, Amazon's Alexa system, if you got one of those little Alexa boxes in your house, that isn't a little computer. It doesn't have a little computer in it. It really is just a microphone receiver. A microphone and a speaker, that's all it is. When you say something to Alexa, it communicates that information back to Amazon Web Services. That's what it does. It communicates it back to them, just like Google Voice. It communicates it back to their central servers. When you use Google Voice, it isn't your phone that translates what you're saying. It's Google's servers. You're actually sending a CB radio phone call back to Google. That's what you're doing. You're sending a phone call to Google, which is recording your voice. By the way, they're recording your voice. When you make a voice to text, That information is being processed by Google servers, not your phone. Your phone is just transmitting that information to Google servers. Well, it's coming back so quick. Yes, it's because it's on all the time. It's always got a connection to their server all the time. It isn't something that it doesn't make the connection to the server when you press that little microphone for the voice to text. It establishes the connection to the server when your phone boots up. And it's running in the background. So it's okay for these things to do all this stuff. When it's these American tech companies, it's all right for them. The Chinese show up and all of a sudden it's a problem. And I'm not saying that they should get your information either. China is no friend to black people, that's for damn certain. I'm not saying that they should get your information either. What I am saying, though, is that if the Chinese government is bad for doing that, your American companies should be equally as bad. But the American companies are serving something different because, as we all know, the American companies work hand in hand with the FBI, which means they work hand in hand with COINTELPRO, which means that they work to sit up here and monitor black people, which is why you've got all your white YouTubers make tons of money and your black folk get suppressed. Isn't that amazing? That's the way it was in magazines with published media. That was the way it was on radio. That's the way it was on TV. Even on the internet, if you're black out here, it doesn't matter how great you are, how wonderful what you do is, you're always way behind your white counterparts. COINTELPRO 4.0, damn 2.0. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller area code 612. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
T from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Okay, what was your name again?
T from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Hello, T from Minneapolis. What's on your mind?
Okay, so to me, Jason, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for the wonderful broadcast that you do. You're always on fire. And then secondly, to me, this picture is like a sign of us. You know, I wasn't born in 1960, but to me, this is like a sign of us making it. Okay. And that was terrible. Okay. For us to put our children, to even be in a position to have to put our children in that harm's way like that, where, you know, adults were calling children names, niggers, and all the hateful words that they would spew at those children just trying to get educated. And I think it's the beginning of the end of our community, because many were to follow that move, you know, trying to integrate. And then secondly, you know, it's funny that our community does all this complaining about what these people are doing at the school board after the fact. So, you know, my children are grown now, but I was very active at the PTA meeting, the parent-teacher conference. You just don't go to the parent-teacher conference. You have to be at the PTA meeting so that you know what's going on, what they're planning to do with the curriculum. So if there's 100 black kids in the school, there should be 100 black parents or 200 black parents at the PTA meeting to find out and be involved in what's going on with the school. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Jason.
Well, that's very, very true. You have to be involved. You can't just be following up on these things. You can't just have kids turn them over to the school and then you going back home for the turn up. You can't do that. If you're going to be a parent, you have to be involved. That's called being a member of the community, but that's also called being a parent. So very good point to make there as well. Thank you very much for giving us a call. Let me get caller from area code 936. You're on live with the Black Channel. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hello? Hello?
You're on live,
Hello?
sir.
Oh, yes. This is Jared Ward. I'm calling from Houston, Texas. Do you hear me?
Okay, brother, it sounds like you're calling from the moon landing in 1967. If you're on a speakerphone, you take it off. Okay, this fellow here is calling us. He's literally sitting there on his 1937 Bell South anchor phone. So I don't know what's going on there, but folks, you are in a war to erase black history. The stakes are everything. The stakes are your future heirs, your generations, your successors. The stakes are everything. I want everyone to know what we're up against because the stakes are everything. We're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight's program here. I want to thank everyone who has contributed to support tonight's program on PayPal, Cash App, Super Chat. B1 Media is a lifesaver. Mr. Dinkins, thank you very much for your support. And Vegan Luxury, I see you out there. Thank you very much for your support here as well. If you are new here to the Black Channel, welcome to the Haven of Intelligent Black Thought. We do this every weekend. Click that red subscribe button. Click that yellow notification bell. Join us each and every time that we're here. If you haven't been to our website, blackchannelfilms.com, you want to go there and check out our groundbreaking best-selling documentary work, 7 a.m., Gentrified, Race War, all available on DVD and streaming. Go to blackchannelfilms.com. That is blackchannelfilms.com. I want to thank all of you for joining us here tonight. I want to thank all of you here for tuning in. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the program. And this concludes tonight's broadcast of The Black Channel. I am your host, your brother, your humble servant, the Black Authority. And until next time, my brothers and my sisters from around the world, remember, black is the future, and the future is uncompromising.